Hi, I'm Bill Honeycutt, Wrestling Rules Interpreter for the Illinois High School Association. Today I'm going to talk about the new rule added to the section on injury timeouts involving injuries to the head, neck, and cervical column and/or nervous system. The new rule is 8-2-4A, B1, 2, and 3. The acronym for this rule and today's discussion will be referred to as HNC, which will represent the head, neck, cervical column, and/or nervous system. Today I hope to explain the proper protocol and application of the rule during a wrestling match. This rule was added to allow more time to evaluate HNC type of injuries. Now that this rule has been added, appropriate healthcare professionals who are present can request extended time to evaluate HNC type of injuries. This time is limited to a total of 5 minutes and only one timeout for HNC injuries. I will now present situations that involve HNC injuries and the proper application of the rule. Situation 1. During a match, Wrestler A is accidentally injured, hitting their head on the mat. The referee will stop the match and call for the appropriate healthcare professional and start injury time. At the 1-minute mark of this injury timeout, the request is made by the appropriate healthcare professional to extend the injury time for HNC evaluation. At this point, the referee will use the new HNC signal, which is the fist to the forehead, to notify the timer we are now going to HNC time. Since 1 minute of injury time was used before we switched to HNC time, this leaves only 4 minutes to evaluate the injury. Remember, the maximum amount of time allowed to evaluate HNC is 5 minutes. If the wrestler is cleared to continue before the HNC time expires, the clock will stop and the time used will not be deducted from the wrestler's injury time for other type of injuries. However, since we had to stop the match for an injury, the injured wrestler will be charged for an injury timeout. This is very important to understand because later in the match, the same wrestler twists an ankle and needs injury time. The injured wrestler will have 1.5 minutes of injury time to use. However, since this was the second injury timeout for the same wrestler, the opponent will be given choice once the match resumes. Situation 2 involves an HNC injury during the wrestler's second injury timeout. Wrestler A injured their ankle in the first period and used 1 minute of injury time. Now in the second period, Wrestler A hits their head on the mat and needs injury time. The official shall notify the appropriate healthcare professional there is only 30 seconds of injury time remaining and the request for HNC evaluation needs to be made before the injury time expires. If the wrestler is cleared to continue, the opponent will be given choice upon the restart. Situation 3. Now, in the event an HNC injury is the result of an illegal hold, unsportsmanlike conduct, unnecessary roughness, or a false start from the neutral position, the injured wrestler would be placed on recovery time for 2 minutes. The rule does not allow for recovery time to be extended for HNC. Important things to remember per the HNC rule. 1. Only the present appropriate healthcare professionals can request HNC time. 2. Coaches cannot extend injury time and cannot request HNC time. 3. When HNC time is used, the amount of injury time used during that injury timeout will be credited back to the injured wrestler once HNC time has been granted. 4. Recovery time cannot be extended for HNC time. 5. An injury timeout will be charged to the wrestler who uses HNC time even though the amount of injury time used will not count against the wrestler's 1.5 minutes of injury time for other type of injuries. 6. The HNC timeout can only be used one time. If it is needed a second time, the wrestler will default the match. In conclusion, The new rule has provided a reasonable amount of time to evaluate HNC type of injuries.